I'm Lucy.
And I'm Jennifer.
You're listening to Everything I Know About.
Each week, we share everything we know about a new topic, equipped with some internet research and a little too much exposure to pop culture.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We wanted to take the time and share a bit about our backgrounds so that you know a bit about who you're listening to. And also, given this is our first episode, just share about why we decided to start this podcast and what we're hoping to accomplish. I want to tell you guys a little bit about Jennifer. Jennifer and I met about, 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. So we met because we both worked for the same startup, and the startup was remote. So I'm based in New York City. She's in Nashville, and I met her, I think, in a group meeting, and I just saw your little, your Zoom face. But the first time we actually hung out in person was in New Orleans. It was like a company offsite, and we all flew there, and my first impression of you, I remember being shocked because you're so tall. Because, you can't see people's heights when you're just on Zoom. And you're like 5'7", right? 5'8"?
I'm 5'9", yeah.
Shit, yeah. Okay, so I'm 5'3". So I saw you walking towards us and I was like, damn, she's hot.
Wow, thank you.
I feel like I don't see a lot of really tall women unless they're models, So you've definitely got I feel like you really stand out in a good way.
I'm so flattered right now. Thank you. I love this exercise. Keep telling me about myself.
Yeah. And okay, so something else I had learned about her, there was already some office gossip, and I had heard that you had an interesting love story going on.
Oh my gosh, they told you about that before you met me?
Before I met you.
That's so funny.
Because when you started that job, on your first day, you had just gone through a breakup.
Yeah, this is actually a funny story. So I went to go to the orientation meeting after they hired me. This was probably a week before the first full day of work. And I was telling them about my boyfriend at the time, who was a comedian. So I was telling them about him. And literally the first day of my real work, he dumped me. That morning, it was Monday morning, I got dumped. And then I had to go right to work. And I was like, what the hell? It was so awful. And then later I met my current fiance. And then we started dating officially a week after we met. And then we were engaged 3 months later. So just the timeline was so weird. I was like, oh yeah, this other boyfriend, not the one that I originally told you about, but yeah, we broke up and then now I'm dating somebody else. I'm not as unhinged as I sound right now.
Yeah. I feel like it's better to have something memorable than something not at all. And I think as a result of knowing this stuff about you, I was I always thought you were interesting. I always thought you had this rich inner life, which obviously if you're coworkers, especially if you're not co-located, it's harder to get to know one another. We've gotten to know one another a lot better lately, and we only became closer in the last 4 or 5 months, and now we talk every day. Okay, so that's what I heard about you, but what did you know about me? Did you know anything before you met me?
Yeah. So you were friends with one of the co-founders. So they were really talking you up, and they were talking to me specifically because I was the only girl at the time. So they're like, we're going to bring on another woman. How exciting. And I was like, yeah, this is exciting. But then I was intimidated by you at first because they were like, Lucy is the smartest person we know.
Oh my God.
She was a C-level executive at her previous startup. She was at McKinsey. She's so intelligent. She's one of the best people we know. And I was like, damn, this girl is going to be on it. And I was so excited for you to join. I remember we had our first meeting. And maybe it was just because I had that backstory of you, but my impression of you via Zoom was the same. I was like, oh yeah, this girl's serious. She's got it going on. She knows what to do. She's confident. She's a consummate professional. And I always felt you were very competent and intelligent. And I felt you kept your personal life kind of close to the chest in a work setting. So it wasn't until we actually met in New Orleans that I got to see your personality a little bit more. And I didn't think you were super short when I first met you. So
thanks.
That didn't go two ways.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel a lot of people have said to me that they think I'm intimidating. I don't know. A lot of women have told me that they find me intimidating. I become friends with them after, and then they tell me, oh, I thought you didn't like me at first. And I think I'm just not very good at being super open, when I first meet someone. I think it takes me a while to warm up or feel I can share more. But also, I don't know, I feel girl code is something that I'm honestly not very familiar with. I think some women, women who are friends with a lot of other women, which has never frankly been me. I've always been not necessarily friends with more guys, but I've always been a relationship girl. I've always been dating someone, and often the closest person to me is the person I'm dating. And I'll have girlfriends, but like I don't have like a Sex in the City crew that I like get brunch with every week or anything. And it's something I've honestly always wanted, but I've really struggled because I almost feel like I don't know how to really act around girls. A lot of the like, I don't know what to call it, like a lot of the fawning that happens when women meet other women and like first get to know each other or like are becoming friends, I almost like don't know how to do.
Oh, I so sympathize with you on this because I feel the same way. I feel like I have to almost like put on an act when I'm doing it. Like it's not how I naturally want to act, but I know that's what I'm supposed to do to make, I don't know, like the energy, the right condition to be able to have a female friendship. But like I kind of appreciate that you don't play that game though, because like I feel like I always like kind of know how you feel and like where you're at, and you're not playing around and you're not like trying to be somebody that you're not. So now that I know you better, I totally appreciate that about you. But yeah, I like kind of felt the same way. Like I didn't know if you liked me at first either.
Yeah.
But now I just understand that you're just not going to be like, oh my God, hey girl, like how are you?
Yeah.
Like the first time that we meet. I similarly have like a difficult time with that as well. Like I moved around a lot growing up. Like I moved 8 times. And so I like never had like really long-term friendships anyway until I went to college. But I don't want to be like a bimbo when I meet somebody and be like, oh my God, hi. But then also at the same time, it's like I want to come across as friendly and I don't know how to do that. Like I feel like I come across as kind of like harsh if I'm not like that. And it's you have to learn.
Totally. I don't think it's something I was aware of until I like really went to college and like became an adult. Now that I'm aware of it, it is interesting because I feel like you have to make the choice to put on the show. I mean, honestly, I don't know. Maybe for some girls it totally comes naturally. But definitely for me, it doesn't. And often I'm just like, I don't know how to play the game. I honestly think it's just that I don't know, not that I'm necessarily making a conscious decision to opt out of it. But then at the same time, I still want that like group of really close girlfriends who you can say anything to and you can talk about shit that's like just fun. And it doesn't have to be like cerebral or whatever all the time. And you can just like say whatever. And I feel like I've never really had that, but I have friends who have that. So I'm like, clearly they can be both ways.
Oh, yeah, totally. And like speaking of, that's like something that we do chat about quite a bit on the pod. We talk a lot about community. And I think this is like one of those community things that I struggle with because I think I'm a little bit more of an introvert, even though like I enjoy going out. I just find it socially draining to be social, unfortunately. And to your point too, like being a relationship girl, like I find it like so much easier to have like one point of contact and it's like going to be my partner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, same. It's always funny because I feel like there's always like the inner self and then there's the outer self, right? Like I think actually all of us in our inner selves are like weird and strangely like similar in our weirdness. Like I think that's why with TikTok and social media, a lot of the trends that really pick up steam, the ones that I always get served are like other married couples talking about their quirks. And half the time I'm like, oh, I thought that was something unique to me and Avery, my husband, but actually I guess it's just like everybody's kind of weird when the doors are closed and you just don't normally see that. And I feel like for me, like I want to get to the weirdness. I feel like people are so much more interesting once you get to the weirdness, but I'm still trying to figure out how to like build enough intimacy with people where like they feel comfortable doing that and like vice versa. Because I think to expect vulnerability, you have to like open up yourself and be vulnerable. So we, in an effort to try to not be self-conscious and share more about ourselves and be open and vulnerable with you guys, we each prepared a couple questions, some serious, some fun for each other. And I haven't seen your questions. You haven't seen mine. We're just going to do them live right now. And I think we're going to get to know each other a little bit better, but also you guys can kind of get a peek into our personalities.
Yeah, I'm not going to be held responsible for anything I say in the next 15 minutes.
It's going to be really real. Okay. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go?
I want to ask my questions first.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Lucy, if you were guaranteed to accomplish one thing in the next 10 years, what would it be and why?
Okay, starting with a tough one. So this has been on my mind a lot because I just turned 30 a couple months ago and have been thinking a lot about the next decade of my life. I feel like I've just like lived my life up till now fulfilling the expectations of a lot of other people and, you know, what society thinks I should be doing and like what society rewards. And that's why I found it so hard to be like, well, what do I want? And like, how can I really, really dig in and make sure it's like coming from like a pure place rather than something that will make me feel good because I am externally motivated. You know, like I do care about approval and I care about money. So,
hey, that's an important thing to know about yourself, though.
Yeah.
Like, even that is like something that I think we try to like beat out of ourselves. Like, don't be motivated by these things. But like, honestly, who isn't? And just like admitting that, I think alleviates a lot of anxiety and stress.
Yeah. I think what I've realized is like those things, I mean, one, I don't go to a therapist. I'm looking. So if anyone has any recommendations, let me know. I'm looking for a therapist. But
BetterHelp sponsor us.
these are like
Spon-con.
half baked thoughts. But yeah, I do think I'm like realizing, wow, who I am has been shaped so much by like not only how I was raised, but also just like societal forces. And I think we talk about this a lot on the pod, just like the generation we grew up in and what we were exposed to in the media and like trends really impacting how we thought about ourselves and what we wanted. Like we have an episode about girl bossing. And, you know, when we were growing up in our early 20s, that was like the rise of a girl boss. And that so sunk into my psyche. Like I think I really, really bought into that. And it's only in the last few years that I've kind of come up for air and realized like, whoa, who was that really serving? Like, is that actually what I wanted? And anyway, this is such a long-winded answer, but I think where I'm at now is I guess I have like two potential answers on the path of more acceptable societal things that are in line with money and in line with capitalism. I would love to have my own business that I can support myself with, that I'm proud of, that I can make the decisions for and be actually independent. So if I could accomplish that in the next 10 years, like that is definitely one of my major goals. I think what makes that challenging and why sometimes when I think about that goal, I feel sad is because it doesn't feel like it's 100% in my control. It feels like I could just like try and try and try and try. And in 10 years, maybe I'm still not successful. And I think that really scares me. But I'm also not willing to give up on that dream and just go work for the man for the next 10 years. I think my fear is just like, you can want it so bad. You can like work really hard, but if you're actually successful at that is so dependent on like luck and timing and all of these factors outside of your control. At least that's what I've learned. I don't think I thought that when I was younger. So I don't know. My husband keeps telling me if that's what I'm picking, I need to be okay with the process and just like find joy in the process instead of being so obsessed with the end result.
I was going to say, like, Avery, that's the best advice.
I know. I'm literally too poor to afford like $200 an hour for therapy. So I've just been slowly getting Avery to become my therapist.
Just wait till that business pops off. We'll get the expensive therapy.
Yes, I do think that is the number one thing I want. But because I can't really control it, I would also be really happy if I could just be creative and like have, like, I would love to write a book. And I think because self-publishing is such an option nowadays, it feels more doable. That to me is like, okay, you write the words and the words add up and you could put it out into the world. And I think I would be proud, even if very few people read my book, just because I had the like mental fortitude. It's hard to write like a novel, you know, and like think of all of the, I mean, you know, you're writing a book. So
yeah. It is hard. Wow. So you have like one slightly external validation goal, and then the writing the book one is internal validation because you don't care if it's successful.
Okay, question for you. What is a moment or a memory when you felt most yourself and why?
Ooh, okay. That's a good question. My first job out of college, I was an assistant buyer at Bloomingdale's. And I was so mentally fried from that. Like I wasn't being challenged at all. And I was like, this is not my life. Like I'm meant for more than this. I cannot. And so I decided I wanted to start my own business. For some reason, I thought I needed to know how to code to do that. So long story short, I went to a coding boot camp, but I was like physically dying inside of a cubicle and needed to like get out in the world. And I was like, I am 23 years old. There's only so many years left where I can do something crazy. And it's like acceptable because I'm still young and I'm like atrophying my soul here. Like it felt like so crushing. And so I sublet my apartment in New York and moved into a co-living / co-working space in Barcelona and did my coding boot camp in Barcelona. And I just felt like those months that I spent there were like, I fucking broke free. Like I did it and I felt like so proud of myself. And also like I was on a path to doing something that was like so aligned with who I actually was. I just felt like authentic and yeah, just like totally myself. God, that's so long ago. That's so sad. I'm like trying to think like if I've ever felt like so myself since then. And I don't think I have. So actually one of the things that I want to do in 2024 is something similar to that. Go on a trip for a few weeks and like feel that sense of freedom and like I'm being like really authentically myself. So this year I want to go to Edinburgh, Scotland for like 3 weeks and do a writing retreat. So that's like my attempt to get back to that state.
Wow, that's so good to know that for yourself. And then you can like chase it at least. Like you know what you're looking for because you felt it.
I mean, yeah, but I hate that. That's how I felt because I feel like because I moved around so much as a kid, I have this internal tendency to feel like if I'm staying in one place, I'm not having like forward movement in my life. And so I feel like I need to move around and that's so counterproductive. You know that old adage that's like, wherever you go, there you are? Like that's something that I need to learn because I feel like even here in Nashville, I moved from New York City to Nashville almost 3 years ago. And I'm like, okay, I'm just like kind of here now. Like things are neutral. Like I have my fiance, I love him very much. Like things are great. And I like don't want to be in a different city than him. But I'm also like, okay, I feel kind of like I'm getting that like urge to move again. I'm like, oh, I kind of am like feeling like I want to go back to New York City or like I need to travel or something. I'm kind of like trying to like beat that away from myself and try to find adventure where I am. And I
Yeah.
think that's a skill. I think it's like almost like a little bit of an immaturity that I feel like I need to go other places to feel alive.
Yeah. No, I'm the exact same way. 100%. I mean,
Oh, really?
I've moved every year. I mean, I've lived in Chicago, San Francisco, Kenya. Like I literally went to Kenya
Yeah, that is wild.
to chase this. Now I'm in New York, but I'm constantly telling Avery like, "Hey, let's just go move to Thailand for 2 years. Let's just go move to Shanghai." I'm so used to like new being exciting and exciting feeling like myself. I feel like I'm the most energized, best version of myself when I'm experiencing new things and like traveling and like just constant stimulation. And that's just not like a realistic way to live your whole life unless you're just always going to be unsatisfied and like never really put down roots. And I think what you just said, like, it's interesting because like your answer to this question, like, what's a memory when you felt more yourself, is like, it is kind of place-based for you. Like, I feel similar about my memories when I think about it. And I think it's more about like figuring out the mindset that you were in. And if you can
Yeah.
like recreate that in other ways, you know?
Totally. I've thought about this so much actually. And like there's weirdly like two non-obvious things that I think go into it. One of them is when I travel for an extended period of time, like in the Barcelona example, I was in a co-living space. I was with like the same group of people for like 4 months. And I knew that was going to end. Like they weren't going to be in my life forever. So it was like expedited intimacy. I felt like I could just be very like authentically myself and vulnerable like from the get-go. And we all got to know each other really well, really quickly. Because you're in such a limited period of time in your life, you're not like worried about like making a mistake or saying the wrong thing. Like you're just really being yourself. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like it's just kind of like you're like totally in the moment, like not thinking about it. Also, like I think there's like a weird thing for me, like being in other countries where the language is not English, because I love languages and I try to learn the language of wherever I am and speak it. And I feel like it makes me more present because I'm constantly thinking about what the other person's saying, how I'm going to say it back. And you do form memories and like feel more intensely when you're deeply present. That's why like people meditate, right? And so I feel like oddly being in a non-English speaking country is like almost a form of presence meditation for me. And it feels like those periods like more vibrant in my life when I like look back in my memories. And I'm pretty sure that's why.
That's so fascinating. You speak 4 languages?
No. I mean, I speak Italian. In high school, I lived in Italy for a year. I did an exchange program and like went to Italian high school. So I speak Italian like pretty fluently, but it's also been like over 10 years now.
I think it counts, girl. Don't put yourself down. Okay, Italian, English.
Italian.
You're learning Dutch.
I'm learning Dutch. My fiance is Dutch, so I can like understand Dutch colloquially, right? Not like seriously. And then in college, one of my majors was romance languages, which was Italian and French. So like I'm,
so French.
Academically good at French, but I wouldn't say I'm like fluent.
4. Come on, you studied it. Okay, people like do Duolingo and then they're like, okay, I can speak Spanish. But what you were saying earlier is like, I feel like I literally had an epiphany because the thing you were saying about it being time bound and almost like outside of your real life, I really relate to that because when something is time bound, you can finally like let go of all of your expectations for yourself in the bigger scheme of things. And I think we're similar in this way in that we both want a lot out of our life and we both have all of these desires that are like difficult to accomplish. We like expect a lot out of life, you know? And I think that's a great thing in some ways, but I think the downside to that is like then when you don't feel like you're achieving what you thought you would achieve or you're not on the path, it's easy to become really down about it. And I think that's why when you have like a structured time when you're just like, I'm definitely doing this, like college was that for me. I felt like, okay, I'm in college for 4 years. So like, I know I'm going to graduate with a degree. Whatever I do while I'm at college is kind of like totally up to me. I can experiment, I can do whatever, and it's not going to be like take me off path, quote unquote. Like you had this experience in Barcelona, like the epiphany I reached as you were talking was like, damn, okay, so if I can just like let go of my own expectations for myself, then shouldn't I theoretically be able to live in that mindset 24/7?
Shit.
Instead of thinking about my years and my days and my months as like working towards something, as like I need to make progress towards something because I'm just like living my life. But if I was like, knew I was going to be like in a different country for the summer or like doing a program for a summer, I would stop thinking about all that and just be present, right? Like you were saying with the language thing as well. Like just be present and like think about the now and like how do I just be happy in the moment? Anyway,
God,
okay.
now I feel like I'm having that epiphany because I'm like,
I know.
I feel like the answer is to just like be present, as trite as that is. Like, it's always the advice.
I know. I mean, the thing is, I feel like I'm having this epiphany, but then as I'm talking, I'm like, wait, this is like obvious. I feel like everybody tells you this shit, but it's so hard to like, the difficult thing is not realizing it. It's like doing it, right? Like everybody knows this.
But there's so many different flavors of it too. Like when someone tells you to be present, like sometimes they're like, just like feel your mug and how warm it is. I'm like, but that's not really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about like not living in the future and like thinking about how every move you're going to make today is going to impact the next 10 years. Like that's a different kind of being present.
Yeah.
Than, like,
I think it's almost more
moment.
like letting go. Yeah. I don't want to make it sound like we have this shit figured out. This is like literally like, I feel like I've known this. I just cannot seem to do it for like years and years and years.
Yeah, that's also, I think, like sort of the theme of this
our
podcast
life.
too. It's like, we don't, it's like, we don't know, but we will research and explore and let you know what we find out. But we're not claiming to be experts on anything.
Yeah. Okay. Give me another question.
Okay. So this actually like flows really well from what we were just talking about. But what were the best and worst phases of your life so far?
Okay. Great question. Best phases, ones that immediately jump out. I mean, I loved college. I had an incredible experience in college. The highlights of that were like I traveled a lot over the summers. I did 6 weeks in India after my freshman year and 4 weeks in Ghana, where I lived with a host family in Ghana.
You picked like really off the beaten path locations. That's fascinating.
Yeah, because at the time I was really into social entrepreneurship. So I wanted to like go to less touristed kind of areas and just see real life. I don't know, just like be a part of it. So college was amazing for me. Like I felt like I really figured out who I was and my identity. I would say one of those things was the travel. Another thing was like writing. I was big into reading, but I'd not written at all prior to college. And then in college is when I took a class where I wrote my first poem. And then I ended up majoring in English and doing a poetry thesis where I wrote 50 poems. And so even just writing the 50 poems was like a lot of introspection that I was doing for the first time because I was like so young. It was like the first time that I thought about things like misogyny and feminism. And maybe this is ignorant because maybe I should have thought about it in high school, but I don't think it was until college that I came to a lot of realizations about what it felt like to be who I was in the world. As a child of immigrants, as a woman, as a privileged person, you know, coming from like more of a middle class background, but also as a person who felt like they had everything to prove and like a huge chip on their shoulder, you know? For me, college was this like real time of awakening. And I think since then it's been like, wow, how do I like preserve a lot of that? Because I think in college I was able to have all these identities. Like I was in the business school, but I also was an English major. I did entrepreneurship stuff, but I also was like traveling all the time and like writing poems. So I felt like really whole because I could do all those things. And since then, I've only ever worked in business. I've only ever worked in tech. And so it's felt like half of me has just been neglected. So yeah, I guess, okay, your question, like worst time, I had a really down period and I hadn't really struggled with depression or like mental health in college. But right after I left my first job out of school, which is at McKinsey, I had this moment where I was like, wow, what am I doing? Because I really, by the end of that job, I was like really ready to quit. And I remember because I was back on campus for like a recruiting event and I was walking around some of the same places that I walked around when I was a senior in college. And I was like crying on campus. Because for me, I was like, oh my God, I'm only 2 years out of school. And I literally remember what it felt like 2 years ago as a senior, feeling like on top of the world. And now here I am and I feel like so lost. How did I like stray so far from like who I was then? And after that experience, I was like, okay, I quit. I also created this big plan for my 20s where I was essentially like, okay, when was I happiest? Let me try to like break down that experience and then do all those things in my 20s to like try to better understand myself. So like my 3 things were literally like,
you went into like experimentation.
I know,
phase.
this is like my crazy brain.
Wow.
But literally I was like, okay, I was so happy in college. What was I doing? Like one, I was like, had the writing thing going on and I was going to all these like super interesting retreats and programs and getting published and like that whole world. So one of my things was like, okay, before I turn 30, I want to like dedicate 6 months to writing. Then I was like, okay, also I just felt like really motivated by this project I had in college where I was like focused on social entrepreneurship in Kenya. And so I was like, okay, what about that experience was so great? Was it Kenya? Was it doing the social entrepreneurship thing? Was it just the fact that it was mine and like I created it and I was in charge and I had power? Did I value power? So my two other things other than the writing thing was like, okay, let me like, how do I like get into a really senior position where I like do have decision-making power? And then my second thing was like, I need to
Mm.
live abroad and I need to go and like try the social entrepreneurship thing, most likely somewhere in Africa.
And you did all of that.
I did all those things. Yeah, that's literally like what led my life for the next 4 or 5 years. And then when I finished that list, that's why I had that big crisis. Like I came back and I was like 28, 27. And I thought that by doing those three things, I would have had the answer. Like I literally thought when I was 23 and really upset in this moment that I was never going to feel upset again because I was going to do these things and I would be able to recreate the happiness I felt in college. And then I did those things. And I mean, I had an amazing experiences doing those things. Like I have no regrets, but I realized, okay, it's actually a lot more complicated. When I came back, I was like, okay, like I haven't actually found out how to create this like within my brain. Like I've been doing all these things, but they're like situations I'm putting myself into and I haven't actually come towards any kind of like inner peace or happiness.
Yeah, I'm like relating a lot to what you're saying. And I feel like, God, they're saying that like 40 is the new 30, 30 is the new 20. Yeah. And I feel
Yeah.
like what you're describing is so that like when we're getting into our 30s, we're like, oh, we're supposed to have everything figured out. And then you realize, no, you're not going to have everything figured out. And it turns out like everyone around us doesn't have everything figured out either. And that's
Yeah.
okay. But I think that's so interesting that you went through the whole experimentation phase and actually did everything. And you were so introspective and were able to pinpoint exactly what you wanted out of the next decade and like when and actually did it. That's like the most productive use of a depressive period I've ever heard in my entire life. That's inspirational.
Well, that was what got me out. Like having the plan was what got me out of the depressive period.
Wow. I'm in awe. Like that's incredible. Now I understand why you had such a hard time answering what you wanted out of the next decade. Because you were like, my God, I've been through this.
All right. Question for you. What is one of your most important values and how did you develop that value? How did you come to value it?
I would say my most important value is authenticity. Okay, so this like means a few different things for me. Like I feel like if I'm ever living a lie or in a way that I don't actually like this, or like I'm dating somebody I don't actually like, or I'm friends with somebody that I don't deep down actually like, it will just like burrow inside of me until I can't take it anymore and I need to fix it. And that's something that I've tried really, really hard not to get complacent about. In my early 20s, I found myself like, okay, I don't like my job. So everyone else around me also doesn't like their job, but they've gotten complacent about it and then just like eventually live this life that they don't really like. And I was so terrified of that I think I actually like over index for it. Like anytime I'm like not really loving something, I move away from it. But I think it's like in the pursuit of authenticity. And it's really like a fear of waking up one day and realizing that I don't actually know who I am or what I like. And I didn't live in a way that was true to me. And I am kind of like spiritual woo-woo mysticism girl. So I kind of like do have this idea that like I was put on this planet to experience something or accomplish something. And if I don't listen to my preferences and what I'm liking and not liking, I'm never going to reach whatever it is that I'm supposed to reach. And like, that's really the only compass that I have in this life. And so I consider it like a deep relationship with myself, with my purpose. And if I'm not aligning with those things, like, why am I here? Why even do anything? So I know that sounds like very intense, but that is, that's my value.
Yeah, it's so funny because I feel like whenever we talk about this kind of stuff, I like feel like, oh, we're so similar. Like, I feel similar. Like whenever I don't feel like I'm living my truth or I'm like not happy for a while, I'm like, oh, it's time to change things then. Like I'm certainly not just going to like keep doing what I've been doing. But then, so we both just took personality tests for our personality test episode, everything I know about personality. And our personalities are like literal opposites. And yet, I think the way that we've approached our lives is we've made a lot of the same decisions. Like we both aren't good at putting up with like bullshit and like we'll quit jobs quickly when we feel like it's no longer serving us.
I know. What I gathered from us being on opposite ends of the personality spectrum is that I'm like way more feelings based. And you're more intellectual. Like you just described, like I was in a depression. So I thought about all of the things that I liked and implemented them in my life. When I deal with depression, I'm like, I'm going to sit here and journal and like write song lyrics and like maybe write some poetry. And then like, what is the meaning of life? And like ponder in that for a long time.
Yeah, totally. But then even through our very, very different approaches, we still come to the same like actual action at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like we're both sitting here working together because we like want the same things and like we're on the same path. Like we both left our jobs to take a risk and like pursue building something ourselves that we're going to be really proud of.
Exactly.
Okay, let's do rapid fire for the last. We each have 2 fun questions.
Yeah. I love this. Okay, so my fun question actually like kind of goes into like my weird spiritual shit. Sorry, Lucy.
No, I'm excited. Bring me in.
Okay, so if reincarnation were real, accept the premise. Who were you in a past life? Where were you? Who were you?
Oh, what a fun question. I don't know why my brain is going like immediately to like ancient civilizations. Obviously that's not like the immediate generation before me, but okay. I think I would be like, let's say we're in like feudal Europe. I think I would be like not peasant, but like a lowly member of the court. Because I think, I don't know, I guess like, okay, in buying into the reincarnation, I'm also buying into karma, right? And I think, okay, here's all my baggage getting unpacked. But like, I feel like if you're born with a lot of privilege, like if you were born into nobility or whatever, it's hard to be a good person. I don't know. It's just have a lot given to you and maybe you're not as like self-aware of your privilege. But then I think I don't believe that society is fair, right? So I also don't believe in the myth of like social mobility. So I think if you're like born a peasant in feudal Europe, your opportunities are very limited and you're going to like stay a peasant in feudal Europe. So I'm picking like, I guess a position where I feel like, okay, a lowly member of the court, they had some privilege. They had like access to education, but they have to like fight their way, right? Like they have to like make their own way. And hopefully, because I do feel like my life is like, I've really had to deal with very little hardship in my life. Like I've been very, very lucky. And so I do think I must have done good things in my past life to like deserve this life that I was born into with the whole concept of karma. And so I'm hoping that like, okay, this former life, I don't know, maybe there was like a sick horse in a stable and I like helped the horse, you know? Like, I don't think I did anything crazy, like saved anybody's life, but maybe I like did, you know, I did something good-ish where it was enough to give me the life I live now.
I love how your logic was like, I've had it good, so I must have been a peasant feudal European child whose life sucked.
Well, yeah.
Great answer.
Okay, question for you. Would you want to be famous? And if yes, in what way?
I mean, duh, I'm doing this podcast. No, I'm just kidding. I would want to be like low-key famous, niche famous. Like if I was like a famous author that people loved, but I could like still go to the grocery store. I want to be like, oh, this, okay, so I live in Nashville and Ann Patchett, famous author, also lives in Nashville. And I saw her at the grocery store and she was not getting harassed. Like nobody said anything to her, but she often says that people walk up to her in the grocery store and say like, thanks for everything that you've done in the community, or I love your books. Like that's a sweet level of fame. And she like, I don't know, like knows the presidents.
Yeah, that's
gets invited to shit. Like she has like connections, but her life isn't overrun by it. That is the sweet spot. That's what I want.
amazing.
All right. If you could adopt one quality from someone in your life, what would it be and who would it be from?
Oh, that one's so easy for me. I mean, I would definitely want to be more patient and I would take that from Avery. I want things to just roll off my back. Like one, I like get angry pretty easily. If annoying things happen to me, like my first emotion I feel is anger. Even though it dissipates quickly, like I'm not one to hold grudges, I just wish I didn't even feel it. Like why do I let little things under my skin so easily? And I just don't want that. I don't need that in my life.
Okay. The chill pill from Avery.
Okay, last question for you. It's a would you rather. Would you rather be more attractive than you currently are or more intelligent than you currently are? And I think this is hard because you're both. So I think it's kind of like Pandora's box on either way, right? So I think that's why the question is interesting, just for our listeners who don't know you as well.
I hate that I'm hesitating. I feel like the feminist in me wants to scream like, duh, I'd be more intelligent. But like, obviously I got to contemplate it, right? Okay, I think I actually would choose intelligence, not being socially pressured into it. Because if I were like incredibly fucking hot, I wouldn't do anything with it. Like I'm too much of an introvert. Like I wouldn't want to be a model. I wouldn't have an OnlyFans. Like my goals in life have more to do with intelligence. And like my fiance's hot. I have everything I need from like the looks department. Like it's fine. Like I don't need to have higher aspirations for like my little TikTok account or something. I don't know. It wouldn't serve me. Yeah, I feel like if I like had a hard time with dating though, like honestly, I would definitely choose attractiveness because I agree with you that like your partner influences your life happiness so much. And I feel so grateful to have a partner that I'm like over the moon about. But like if I didn't feel that way, I would like 100% choose attractive. So that's the T. That's like me being real vulnerable for a second. The feminist in me hates that answer, but that's the truth.
No, I also feel like honestly when I thought about this question myself, I was like, I don't think it's that easy. Of course, there's like the quote unquote right answer is more intelligent, but I honestly think like One, if you're talking about more intelligent than we currently are at, which we're both like, we obviously do like challenging jobs where like intelligence is a part of it. But like also intelligence, the downside of it is I think it makes you like kind of neurotic. Not that I'm like, oh, I'm so smart, that's why I'm like the way I am. But I do feel like obviously there's people, this is the extreme, but people who are so intelligent that they can't really like connect with other people. And
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't want that. Like I feel like it can be isolating.
100%. There's this lovely meme graph thing that goes around Reddit sometimes in like the programmer circles. And it's like on the x-axis, it's level of intelligence from like idiot to super genius. And then on the y-axis, it's like enjoyment out of life or like how hard things are. And then actually, if you're like really stupid, the graph is like low. It's like, no, things are pretty easy for you because you just like assume that you're doing everything right because you're too stupid to know otherwise. And then like the intelligent people have like the highest level of difficulty because they know they're doing everything wrong and need to question and overthink. But like they have the awareness, but not the high enough intelligence to actually overcome those things. And it's like the genius levels that are like, no, everything's actually easy because I've moved past that and then can actually think through things.
Yeah. Like I can't even imagine that level of genius where you've just moved past it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like definitely on the lower tier. I'm like intelligent enough to be self-aware that like everything is probably wrong and I'm overthinking everything, but not intelligent enough to just move past it quickly.
Yeah. So true. So true.
Well, this was a fun combo. I actually feel like I learned things about you.
Same.
So podcast listeners, you know us better than we even knew each other before we started this combo.
All right, let's wrap up by sharing a bit about what people should expect from the pod. So we decided to create this podcast when we both realized we were going through a midlife, a quarter life, some sort of crisis, the crisis you hit when you turn 30 that I feel like a lot of people can relate to. And we were just faced by like all of these impending big decisions. The decisions we were going to make in the next year or two were really going to define the rest of our life in terms of really what did we want to bet on when it came to our career, and if we wanted to have children, how to think about questions facing our society today. And we thought we would take our amateur stab at answering some of life's biggest questions with a little bit of internet research and a lot of opinions and let you into these conversations about what we're currently obsessing over.
Yeah, definitely. And then like how often we realized like, do you get the opportunity to be really intentional and deep dive on one topic that may just be kind of silly? Like I was like, I am having these bizarre dreams lately. Do they mean anything? And we did a whole episode on like deep diving into dream interpretation. So these are questions that you'll probably have pop up in your life or already have, and we'll give you all of the research. So, spend an hour with us instead of 6 hours on JSTOR.
I mean, we named the podcast Everything We Know About, which is in itself like incredibly vague and incredibly broad because I think we just didn't want to be boxed in. I think like we have so many varied interests, and also we're just chronically online. And usually throughout my day, I'll go through and I'll see like different things and I'll be like, whoa, I want to learn more about that topic. But I, prior to this podcast, like never made time to really look into it. And for me, this has been like an amazing venue to really dig into those curiosities and answer some of my questions. And because the topics are super top of mind for a lot of people, like we really want to share that with our listeners. So in future episodes, you can expect introspective, research-driven conversations on topics ranging from media portrayals of motherhood to the trad wife, the psychological benefits of living a creative life, to understanding how our personalities are developed and how that can impact our success over our lifetime.
We have so much more coming as well. Hopefully, if you come along for the ride, you will also learn and gain some insights on these topics that we choose every week.
If you have any topic suggestions that you're really curious about or you want us to look into, you can email us at everythingiknowaboutpod@gmail.com. It's really us, like we're very small. We read all the emails, so please do send in any feedback or ideas that you want us to chat about. If you enjoy the pod, we would love for you to give us a follow and rate us on Apple Podcasts, which helps us get the word out and reach new listeners. Full transcripts and show notes are available on Patreon, where if you choose to become a patron, you'll also get access to bonus content, our monthly book club, and our eternal gratitude.
If you'd like to get in touch or suggest a topic for a future episode, email us at everythingiknowaboutpod@gmail.com or DM us across all socials at EikaPod, that's EIKA pod. Thanks for listening and see you next week.